here in the perimeter, there are no stars. Out here, we is stoned, immaculate.
Hello and welcome. This is the C86 show. I'm David Eastaugh. As you know, we love a special guest this time. It's the turn of the New Zealand singer-songwriter who was also part of the new wave and new romantic scene of the early 1980s. It's the one and only Zaine Griff, who I spoke to very recently to find out more about life, love, poetry and all that other groovy stuff. Has had a prolific life in music, starting at the age of 16 with the rock band The Human Instinct, solo career in the early 80s, and has worked with lots of other musicians and artists that you'll find out about in this fascinating interview. So make notes, I will test you at the end. So after several minutes of interesting but casual chat, we get down to the exciting subject of the early formative years. Zaine, it's over to you.
I guess I was brought up in the same era with those artists as well. And I listened to a lot of more English artists than American artists. I just loved the energy of the English music that was coming through.
Yes.
But in 74, I made my escape out of here and landed in London and joined a band and discovered particularly Sparks and those kind of bands, you know, that were Cockney Rebel.
I know that was a classic period. Were your parents at all musical, or gave you a sort of a musical education?
No, not necessarily. My mum used to sing all the time in the house, but no instruments as such were around except what I used to buy or my parents brought for me.
Yes.
Guitars. Yeah, there was always a piano in the house. But I guess, my sister played a little bit. I played more. And, Mum sang Frank Sinatra.
Did you have... Oh, that's not... I mean, at the time, it probably looked very old people's music, but now we look back and think, oh, it's quite good, really. I mean, you know, people like Elvis Presley seemed such a sort of relic from the past. And in a weird way, the Beatles, when I started becoming aware of music, they'd only just broken up, but it did feel like it was like decades ago. You know, it was like a whole... And you thought they were only broken up about 3 years before I became, or 2 years before I became much more obsessed with the top 40 or the top 20 and Top of the Pops and stuff like that. So it's a very strange looking back on it. And I had an older brother who was actually born, I think, the same year as you, and he was into the prog rock period of the 70s actually. So I would sneak into his room and look at and be amazed with these albums and the sounds of them, because they weren't on Top of the Pops or in the charts, but there they were, the Roger Dean covers, and yes, Genesis, Wishbone Ash, we loved it.
Well, that's interesting because that was the more musical direction. Like, as a musician, you're learning all their music. You're listening on the radio to commercial music, but you're listening to more interesting musicians, and you want to play like them or find out how they played that, and you discover the musical side.
Yes, well, absolutely. So you sort of would have... Yeah, you would have been a bit just too young for the psychedelic 60s, wouldn't you? But then the early 70s, you get to 16, which is like 73. I'm doing the maths here, aren't I? So what happens when you're 16? Do you leave school at this period, or do you go on for... Do you leave school?
I left school and I joined a band in New Zealand called The Human Instinct, who had a massive following here. So I was able with them to... learn stagecrafts and recording skills and then writing skills. And I was able to compose music for the band to play.
Yes.
And I was extremely young and they were encouraging me to compose. So that was really the opening door for me, was working with these guys who were, to me, they were much older than me, but they mentored me. The likes of Morris Greer and Martin Hope, John Donahue, incredible musicians, but also open to new ideas. But we toured New Zealand, we went even to Tahiti, would you believe, and did shows there and come back. And I just got the bug to travel. I just wanted to find out more.
Yes, because they were quite a psychedelic band in New Zealand.
They were heavy in those days. They were loud, raucous, and had a bad reputation.
So I think Joan Jett had a song called that, didn't she? Or was it
Something like
or the Runaways? It was one of those. It was that very kind. So were you a bass player at this point?
Yeah, I was a bass player at that point.
When did you get a
Well,
bass guitar?
when basically I converted my six string into a bass when we didn't have a bass guitar in the band before that. I just put different, strings on my guitar and changed everything and turned it into a bass and started playing bass. And it
Yes.
just come that way that the band I was in just out of school had a residency and shared the residency with the Human Instinct. And when their bass player left, they asked me to join the band. So
Right.
I was well and truly playing bass guitar then, and continue playing bass when I got to the UK.
Yes. And did
Yeah.
you go into the studio with the Human Instinct?
Did 2 albums, yeah.
Right.
So I was introduced to recording rather early, which was
Blimey.
awesome.
Well,
Yeah.
it must have been a hell of an education at this time, because were they in their like late 20s, early 30s?
They were, late 20s. Yeah.
Right. There you go.
They all seem so old to me.
Yeah, they would have, you hardly started shaving at the age of 16. It's like
Something
I,
like that.
I know.
Yeah.
Well, you've gone from sort of, I don't know. For school here, it would have been like 11 to 16 was like secondary modern or whatever it's called, and you do your O levels and then you possibly do your A levels at 18. And actually when you look at 16-year-old now, you just think, God, you
Mm,
look so young. When we used to go to Glastonbury Festival, you realize every year you keep thinking, God, they're getting younger, but they're not. We're just getting older every year, and you're just like, this is what
yeah.
16 or 18-year-old looked like, and that's what we looked like once. So yeah, so you must have, that was a hell of a rock and roll education. What did your parents think of you joining the circus?
I did not like that. Because as I said, the Human Instinct did have a very bad reputation for. They're always in the newspapers in New Zealand for trouble. They were heavy metal guys. So a bit raucous, leather jackets and longer
God.
hair, and my hair got longer, and no, my parents did not like it.
Well, I mean, my brother also had a Deep Purple and Black Sabbath albums. So those two albums were very influential in my teen period. And then there was
Mm,
Richie Blackmore's Rainbow, which I thought was stunning. So yes. So was there
yeah.
a particular bass player that you used to sort of copy or sort of yes, look at
Couldn't
as
Probably Jack Bruce. Followed a lot of his work, like his jazz lines and just various players. Um, yeah, a whole, Chris Squire from
oh
Yes.
yes, dear old Chris. What about
So I
John?
went out,
What about John Entwistle?
not necessarily the Who, no. It was more, I don't know, more melodic bass players. Like
Yeah.
Chris was all over the place playing lead lines to me. And I went out and bought a Rickenbacker because of him. And I I had a Fender Jazz bass and a Precision, and yeah, so I had different various styles because I had to learn different styles,
Absolutely.
because we were doing not only our own music, but we were doing trends of that period as well. So I had to learn a whole variance of styles on bass guitar.
Yeah, interesting. And so then what sort of what prompted the move to come to England during the sort of mid
Oh, definitely the music. That was all I wanted to do, was to perhaps just go for 6 months and just maybe get a gig and just see what happens. But it ended up being 10 years. And when I arrived in England, I just looked at, is it New Musical Express or Melody
Yes.
Maker, and looked at the adverts for bass players and landed a job with a group called Babyface. And I think maybe Babyface went to Norwich as well.
Babyface, my God.
Babyface, yeah. And Babyface had a record deal in place already. They were already existing. And I went for the ride with them. It was great. They sort of split after about a year with them, and they reformed as Screamer. and Screamer was signed to Arista Records. So this is how the solo thing came about, where the record company were insisting that I should look at perhaps doing something by myself, because I was writing the majority of music, singing the majority of music, and they sort of triggered the solo thing.
Yes. Did you meet up with then Kevin Ayres at one stage?
I was working, how can I say this? I was doing demos in the Workhouse Studios in the Old Kent Road with Manfred Mann and Chris Thompson from Manfred Mann's Earth Band,
Yes.
producing some demos of mine for Arista Records. Kevin Ayres needed a bass player, and I sat and did an album with him. I have no idea which that album is. And his producer, Anthony Moore, he was doing a solo album, and I played bass on his album. Very similar situation. I was with Screamer with Arista Records. The Kinks needed a bass player for the Misfits album, and I got pulled into that album. So I was getting a little bit of session work, I guess, around that period.
Yeah,
As a bass
blimey.
player.
That was a lot. The Misfits album by the Kinks.
Yeah.
God, that was I sort of have found over the decades. I realise that some artists who get that moment in one decade really struggle when there's the other decade. I mean, it's probably not to do with decades. It's probably to do with every 5 years there's a bit of a musical, or 3 years there's a bit of a musical shift, and some people just are very much part of that period, but that next period, and even like Bowie, I mean, his 60s work, let's face it, wasn't great. 70s, bingo. 80s, it's not quite there, David. And he picks it up and gets himself sorted. But there's a lot of artists from that 70s or 60s, and definitely 70s, whose 80s work you listen to and you think, oh, that's a difficult decade, wasn't it? They got the name producer and stuff, and the Kinks was a little bit like that, weren't they? They just weren't quite cooking on it at that stage.
They to me, they were on a bit of a slide around that period. It was fantastic working with them, but I just they did to have that, they lost their momentum around that period. I found.
Yes, because that was.
But it was still incredible experience working with them.
My God, absolutely. This would have been 77. So as a sort of a musician who'd grown up with the heavy sound and then interest in prog, coming to London during the mid-70s to the late 70s, punk rock was very much there. And that sort of definitely sort of, those bands like, Wishbone Ash and Camel and various, the kind of the Canterbury scene was struggling at this point, weren't they?
Yeah.
So what was it like for you as a musician with punk? But, you would have had a bit of a heavy background. So you might have...
I by then had gone out solo then. I had my own band and touring all over UK. And punk started coming in, and my music changed into that direction slightly, but nothing like it. But did a lot of gigs throughout UK in that period and survived.
Yes.
Come out the other end more understanding where I wanted to head, which was more the new romantic movement.
Yes.
I guess punk allowed me to do my own thing and learn to be on the stage by, fronting my music rather than playing bass.
But you would
the
have.
bass down.
So when your solo career started, though, punk had slightly it completely had its day, hadn't it?
Yes, it had.
But it was before it was absolutely atrocious and became embarrassing. Yes. So as with any quite movement, but you would have come together. That would have been a good time, actually, the late 70s, early 80s, because there was another kind of shift in music. So did you ever have any? Had you ever thought of being a solo artist and a front man?
No, I was just basically encouraged to do it. Not that I ever wanted to do it. It's just that was the next phase. It was simpler. If I was going to do my own music, it was easier for me to do it by myself and bring in musicians for that project, and then let those musicians go after the project rather than keeping everyone on a retainer. So to keep my band together, I just made sure I was on the road all the time, playing live, and learned. I don't know how many hundreds of shows we did, but it was a way of keeping fit. It was a way of keeping your voice strong. It was a way of testing all your compositions.
Well, yes,
and
absolutely.
Out of that, I was able, when I eventually went into the studio to do my first solo album, I had maybe 20 tracks that were tested on the road before they went in the studio.
Yes, absolutely. God, so with the band that you were touring with, did that change from the band that went into the studio to record Ashes and Diamonds?
Yeah, it did. Clive Edwards would be the most prominent and resident musician in that lineup who drummed for me. So I picked up Clive in the early days of my solo career, and I'm still working with him to this day. So Steve Bolton from Atomic Rooster, Paul Young, Alison Moyet, he stepped in and played guitar for me.
Yes, he's still... Actually, I did an interview with him quite recently, and he sort of has got a hell of a story of all the musicians that he worked with during that period, from Atomic Rooster to...
I love Steve's guitar playing. He played guitar on Ashes and Diamonds. Andy Clark from Bebop Deluxe, Bill Nelson's Red Noise. He came on keyboards, and of course Hans Zimmer, who was my keyboard player for 5 years before he stepped out and did his own thing in the music soundtrack industry.
Wow, yes, Hans Zimmer. God, he does go to bad, actually. And how did you manage to sort of get Tony Visconti at this stage? Because this is quite a major scoop, really, isn't it?
It's interesting. I signed to an affiliation of Warner Bros. Called Automatic Music, or Records, Automatic Records. And they put me in the studio with Colin Thurston. At the same time, he was producing Duran Duran, Magazine, and those kind of acts. And it just didn't work out. Colin and I it didn't quite gel.
Mm-hmm.
But I did, in those sessions, he brought in Hans Zimmer. And he ended up moving over to Ashes and Diamonds with Tony Visconti. The record company basically said, okay, well, it didn't work with Colin. Tony Visconti would like to have a go, because Tony trained Colin. Colin was part of the Bowie trilogy in Berlin. So Tony took the reins, and we went in the studio. Yeah.
Perfect. Yes.
With that lineup.
Yes, well, it's the perfect time, really. And I mean, as you probably can gather, I mean, the interest in that whole period of the early 80s with the Blitz Kids and new romantic music, which sort of had its moment, and then, obviously we move on. But now we love to reflect on things in later life, don't we? So there's now an exhibition. Rusty Egan is everywhere. So did you kind of become part of that scene, the new romantic?
Definitely. The whole thing, it was just part of life, because my management at that time was Campbell Palmer, who owned the Legends nightclub. And before Steve Strange, Rusty and those guys would go to the Blitz, they'd always come into Legends. So we always hung out.
Right.
And then we'd shoot off to the Blitz or Embassy Club, and I was living right in Piccadilly at that point. So it was, you go out at midnight to a club, and So I've known Rusty was on the video of Ashes and Diamonds.
Right.
And I promoted that with a video. And Gary Tibbs from Roxy Music was on bass, Steve Bolton on guitar. So, we used to hang out. They're just friends. We used to go everywhere together.
My God, that must have been fantastic.
Yeah. And next door, in my apartment next door, was Mark Waddell. He was a great artist. And everyone in those days, who was anyone, would hang out with Mark. He's an incredible, gifted artist. And So he'd be having morning tea with Boy George and Steve Strange and Marilyn and...
All right. Was Lee Bowery on the scene at that point?
Not sure.
No, he's just had a book. Well, no, just an exhibition. So who was this artist? Mark
Waddell.
God, I know. I've had to confess.
He was very much involved in the Blitz
right.
club and the artistic scene.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, at the end of this month, I'm going to the V&A to see the David Bowie archive. Well, it's an archive, not an exhibition, but there is. Yes. And also in the afternoon, I'm going to go to the Design Museum for the Blitz exhibition to see that. So I'll have to do some research to, because to be honest, during that period, like 75, 79, Thatcher gets in, then we have the Falkland War, there's the miners' crisis, there's Greenham Common. Politically, things are getting a bit messy. It looks kind of quite nice and easy now, doesn't it? But at the time, there was a lot of kind of division, and there was that kind of like the rise of Thatcherism. Did that kind of was that ever part of what was going on?
You could sense the energy of it all. You could sense it, and it was a bit disheartening sometimes to see all this happening. It's a bit like the world now. It's seeing what's happening now in the world. It's then it, and you're very close to it all. You feel it. You'd feel it in the audience even. You just know it's at different times. But you, as a musician, and you just go out and do it. You just, whatever. You're there to entertain. And some of the towns we went to, they're poverty-stricken.
Well, yes. It was rather terrible. Did you have much? Because was it Chalky Davis did the photograph and photography?
Yes.
Did you have much to do with the image that you were going to be portrayed as?
Well, Chalky took a lot of photos, and the record company and design team pretty much put it together, the album sleeve. The shot on the back of my head with the hair, of the back of the cover, the inner cover. Yeah, Chalky had a lot to do with it, but he took it was a big session. Took loads of different images and styles, and yeah.
Yes, my God, that's quite some picture, isn't it?
the Americans, Warner Bros. in New York said, "Great album. When is she coming over to do some shows?" Americans thought Zaine was a girl, so
right. And where did it particularly pick up? Because I find with a lot of bands and artists, they go, God, we were popular in Italy, or Spain loved us, but, the UK didn't, or the UK did, but, and we were quite big in America. What was it like for you? Where was your sort of key audience?
Well, the interesting thing was it was Japan, all because of the image, all because of the clothes, the hair, the makeup, the styling. And I was inundated with Japanese journalists coming to London wanting interviews. And I remember one day I was exhausted. Must have gone through 10 different journalists being interviewed, asking the same questions, and taking photos. And yeah, so the record Ashes and Diamonds did so well in Japan. I never went there until 2014.
Right. God,
but,
was it a bit? Have you ever seen that film Searching for the Sugar Man? The one which is this guy who made a record but spent his life as a janitor. Didn't realise he was bigger than the Beatles in South Africa.
I've heard about it.
Oh, it's just the most touching and moving film. But he absolutely had no idea, and then got this kind of within the film, got to play in South Africa, and he was like the biggest artist there. But.
Wow.
Little did he know, as he was cleaning toilets, that he was big somewhere in the world. So
yeah, I've not seen the movie, but I've heard the story. Yes,
it's rather beautiful. Yes. So once that came out, what was it like getting the tricky follow or the second album? Was that the usual cliche for you, or was that not?
Well, they renewed the contract. They wanted me to be on the label still. They put me in the studio to do some demos for a second album. And I insisted that I co-produce it with my keyboard player, Hans Zimmer. And they said, who? I said, my keyboard player, Hans Zimmer. And they basically said, well, we'll give you do 3 tracks with him, and we'll see whether or not you can go ahead and do the rest of the album. Did the 3 tracks, they loved it, and they said, okay, off you two go. But in reality, it was Hans that produced it.
Right.
I co-produced with him, but he was the driving force of the music in that album.
Yes, that's and again, totally different lineup of musicians apart from Hans. So how did you manage to track down your new set of musicians? Yes.
Basically because we had an idea in the pre-production phase where we were programming, or Hans was programming his computers, what kind of sound we wanted. Warren Cann from Ultravox had already played live with us at Reading Festival, so asked Warren to play drums. Yukihiro Takahashi from Yellow Magic Orchestra played drums, and pretty much I went and sung and wrote for him on his solo album. And I asked Kate Bush if she'd come in and do a duet with me with Flowers, because we both worked with Lindsay Kemp together back in 75, 76.
Right.
And she came into the studio and did that. Linda Jardine was working with Hans already in the Buggles. She did backing vocals. And the rest we did ourselves. There's no guitars on that album.
No, there was nothing at all actually on that.
No guitars. And yeah.
That was quite interesting. So Lindsay Kemp, who obviously Kate's first song on side 1 of her Kicking Inside album, Moving, is kind of a homage to Lindsay, and obviously Bowie worked with him in the late 60s. What was your working moment or relationship like with Lindsay?
Well, I did his classes in Covent Garden, studied with him for probably 6 months in 75.
Right.
And then he asked me whether or not I'd like to join the company as an actor. And they're touring Australia. Would I be keen to come to Australia? I said, no, I've just come from that part of the world. I don't want to go back to that part of the world. And I stayed, but I did continue working with him on stage. I did the Flowers production at the Collegiate Theatre with him and his company. So I had the opening of all the theatrics of Lindsay, and it was really interesting. In the audience, one night would be Mick Jagger, and the next night would be Pink Floyd and Kate Bush, obviously, and you just see them, all these rock artists looking at inspiration of Lindsay because of his theatre, his drama, and the use of lights and the most incredible, powerful lighting rig. Yeah, so he was a massive influence for everyone.
So he was quite special.
Oh yeah, unique. There'll never be another Lindsay. He was.
No. But it's just kind of interesting. It is why some people have that something which is hard to probably describe, but you probably know it when you're in the presence of that person.
Mm.
That's quite. So, what was the track that Kate Bush sings on? Is it the actual title track?
Flowers. Just a song called Flowers.
Right. What studio did you record? You use for that album?
For that album, we used Snake Ranch Studios in Chelsea. And then we went to Rockfield in Wales.
Oh my God, you stayed at Rockfield.
And then we went over to Munich, to Musicland Studios in Munich for mixing.
My God, what a budget.
What a budget, yeah.
And did you enjoy Rockfields? Was that everything you'd ever
dreamt? It was great. I did all my vocals there.
Right, there you go. Did you meet the brothers?
We just went there to sing, or for me to sing, and to be relaxed there and eat good food and go for walks in the country. And
Superb. Oh, I love. Have you seen the documentary about Rockfields?
No, but
it's a delight. It's one of those BBC 4 documentaries about the brothers, and yes,
Yeah.
all those recordings, and yes, absolutely amazing. So then, when that album came out, did Japan again pick up on that, and were you still big in Japan?
Yeah, Japan picked up on it, but probably more importantly, Europe picked up on it. But more interest out of Germany, Holland, France, those territories,
Right.
and England. Um, but unfortunately, because of sales, they didn't pick up on going forward after that point. So
God, that was the end of that. So then, sort of after that experience, did you tour it much, by the way, with such electronic lineup?
yeah, so we took everything on tour. Hans came and did quite a few shows with his big rig. I had Brian Gullen playing keyboards as well and saxophone. Quite a big lineup. Did shows in Holland, the venue in Victoria, and pretty much after that, I went into the studio with Midge Ure,
Right.
and Midge started producing what would be my third album. And I think truly after we did about 6 or 7 tracks, I was so burnt out, I just wanted to have a time out. And
Right.
because during all that period, I was also involved with Andrew Lloyd Webber's Starlight Express, doing the workshop for that, and other things I was doing, an exhibition of art I was doing. I think I just needed time out.
Right, my God, Andrew Lloyd Webber's. Did you say Starlight Express?
I
What
was
was
in the workshop for that,
what, as in sort of developing the production?
developing the production for them to get finance to do the show. Um, Eventually, we did a Skellington version of Starlight Express in front of investors, and they liked it so much that it went ahead. I said no when they did a call up. I didn't want to go back.
Right.
I didn't want to go into that world, but it was good for that 6 months. I did it.
Yes, my God, that was about 83 time, was it? You were doing
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
So then what's your next kind of musical production or direction after that?
Um, in 83, 84, I was working with Midge, and I did Berserker with Gary Newman, did some backing vocals for him. And I just started writing for a new album. And then I got wind that my mum was sick and I needed to come back to New Zealand in 84, which I did in 84.
Right.
Basically, just shut down the musical side of life for a while.
Did you work
Just,
on this project with Hans and then Warren Kane, though? Did they have a musical
I did
collaboration?
the Howden project with them, which was a year in the making. That was around 82, 83.
My God, that is
It was a massive project.
it's huge. It's absolutely huge.
And 4 years ago, I re-recorded that whole album using new technologies, and did the whole album again. And it's
Yeah.
out there. Sony International in Japan picked up on it and released it through their record company.
God, that's amazing. Yeah, so well, it's quite some. Yeah, yeah. Sorry to hear about your. I know having parents and dealing with that. So you came back to New Zealand to look after her.
Well, just to be there, just to be here with her, but she battled on and lived happily, and yeah. So that's what you do.
Well, yes, absolutely. That's always the thing, isn't it? So then, as the 80s progressed, there was that period of that you were very much part of. Well, there was the new romantic scene, wasn't there? But then, sort
Yes.
of when that finished, I mean, I suppose we still had Duran Duran. Then we had the Robin Miller's production sounds with people like Sade and Working Week, and then there was Everything But the Girl. But indie pop came along with bands like the Smiths. How were you? Were you sort of interested in those kind of musical changes that were going on? Were you aware of them?
Very, very, very aware of them. Love Talk, and yeah, bands out of that period.
And I suppose that with that, there was that production, that Trevor Horn production sound that had Frankie and ABC and Dollar. Were you kind of interested in sort of the way that music was changing at that stage?
Didn't so much like Trevor Horn's production because it was just so clean and tidy.
Mm.
And I'd already been working with Hans Zimmer, who Hans had worked with Trevor over Buggles, so I'd done that feel, that overproduction,
Yes.
if you like. If you
It
like.
it does sound dated.
Yeah, I guess I just wanted to get back to basics, I guess,
Yes.
after
So
that period.
so then as the 80s progressed, when's your next release, or what's your next kind of album?
Next kind of album would have been put on hold, to be quite honest, after working with Gary Newman and Midge. Pretty much everything went on hold. Yeah.
Right. So how do you navigate your 90s then? What's your 90s period?
Stayed away.
Did
Very,
you
very
mean
quiet, low key.
did you mean stay away in New Zealand at this stage?
I stayed in New Zealand and stayed away from music
Right.
for a long period of time.
Did that feel a good thing to do or necessary?
I think it was a healthy thing to do.
Right.
Yeah,
There you go. So
just
was
for
the
mental health and physical health.
Yes, absolutely. It does cheer you up a bit. So was the next project Child Who Wants the Moon? Was that
Yeah,
your
yeah. I wrote some songs and got Billy Christian to produce and used the studio up in New Zealand, way up the top. It's called the Far North, and recorded that album just quietly, low key, and released it myself. Yeah,
Yes.
it was good fun. Then I worked with Eddie Rayner from Split Enz, Crowded House
Is that
on
for the Visitor?
a visitor. Yeah,
Right. There you
yeah.
go. And are you
So
still based
gradually. Now I'm writing and recording again. So
Yes. Are you able to sort of keep everything ticking over, both personal as well as your creative life at this stage? Because obviously most people
yeah,
sometimes struggle to navigate themselves and sort of work out what to do next.
yeah, just quietly and just basically just keeping low profile, just doing what I wanted to do. Get the song again to get the songs down. I think was a big thing for me, and
Yes.
and collaborate again with producers and musicians, and I guess that was the side I missed was the
Yes.
collaboration. Yeah,
And was that a nice relationship that you got there?
easy, so easy. Yeah,
And
and
did
for
you
your
ever and did you ever
sorry.
sort of do any live work at this, any
Yes,
live part?
I did some shows in New Zealand. Um, yeah, it was good fun.
Yes.
Just taking those tracks and trialing them on stage again. Yeah, it
And
was
did
good fun.
and did you still enjoy the work that you did as a solo artist back in the early 80s? Was that something that you were still proud of at that point?
Oh yeah, and I'd certainly play the tracks. And even this January, when I did shows up in UK again, the majority of those tracks were from that period.
Yes. Well, I slightly asked because I've recently done an interview with two people from the 80s. There was Annabella from Bow Wow Wow and Terence Trent D'Arby. And both, Terence now doesn't go by that name. He refuses to be acknowledged as that, which is probably going to be difficult for the person putting on the tour because they can't use his name to promote it. So it's a bit tricky. But he's obviously got a lot of issues to do with that period. And Annabella, same,
Mm.
I sort of noticed from her doing the interview with her, she's, it's a very tricky period. I mean, she was only 15 when she was in Bow Wow Wow. I just wondered
Mm.
if you'd also struggled with that kind of time of being in the, on the stage and in the spotlight.
Not necessarily. It's just that I think the thing that I did was I moved away from music for such a long period. So I didn't have any problems with that. It
No.
was. It did what I did,
Yes.
you know,
And sort of.
and I'll still play it tomorrow because I love those
Yes.
songs I wrote. So
Well, it's always interesting. I mean, people. But then when you came to do Mood Swings, you've increased your band again quite a bit more, haven't you?
yes.
And sort of working with a lot more people at this. Was this a much more bigger project that you started to work on?
Well, it started off just with Hugo, Nectar, and myself, the two of us, and it gradually built because we went to Japan and did 2 shows in Tokyo. And my backing band were friends, Japanese colleagues, and they suggested that if, with the new product I was writing for Mood Swings, they could do some music in Tokyo. And just like we're doing a Zoom here, they were in the studio in Tokyo and I was here, not conducting them, but working with them in the studio in Tokyo. So I guess it was really interesting concept to work remotely like that.
Yes.
It was fascinating using Japanese musicians and ourselves here in New Zealand, as
Yes.
well as Clive Edwards in London. Yeah, interesting project.
Well, it would have been. Why? Why? Because Clive is quite a sort of 70s rock drummer, isn't he? How did you how did you come across Clive?
Auditioned when I decided to have the Zaine Griff band, so to speak, way back right from day one when I went solo. In Lewisham, I rented a hall and invited drummers to audition, advertising in the papers, whatever. There were 100 of them, 100 drummers turned up.
Blimey.
And
That must have been a long day.
I handpicked Clive.
Right, he was the man. What was his?
So he's been with me until recently.
Right. Is he still alive?
He's still alive, still playing. I just he's gigging tonight somewhere
Oh, excellent.
in England. Yeah.
No, somewhere in England. That's a great.
He's playing right this minute.
Oh, good old Clive. God, his hearing must be completely shot, though. I would have thought. But yeah, so what was it like setting up your own record label? Was that something that was relatively you wanted to do and B quite straightforward for you?
It was straightforward for me, and it's just a way of me being in control of it. But in saying that, the last 2 albums I've done, the Howden Project and A Double Life I did with Chris Payne from Visage, has gone through Sony International.
Yes.
But for the rest of the world, it's under Zaine Griff Music. So
Yeah.
yeah.
So when you started to sort of think about the Hayden project, he pronounces, what was the kind of reason for sort of revisiting that?
Because to me, the original recording of it needed to be uplifted. It was the production of it was pretty tired.
Right.
So I asked colleagues if they would look at the fact of re-recording it and see what would happen, and it turned into a really good thing. I have to actually shoot. I have to go.
That's all right. Okay.
Running out of time here.
Oh yes, we have actually. God, a double live. So is this all new material?
Yes, it's all new material written by myself and Chris Payne. Chris was for many years Gary Newman's keyboard player, and then he wrote Fade to Grey for Visage.
Chris Payne, blimey. There you go. That is amazing, actually.
With Billy Curry and Midge.
God, that's fantastic, actually. So then that means that you've got your website, you've got your news, and then you've got so you've got that release. And do you have live dates that you've got planned or promoting for this?
No, we're looking maybe next year, 2026, come back UK, but
Yeah.
it's a lot of work to be done about that first.
Well, I would imagine. Well, look, thank you ever so much. I can see it's nearly 10 o'clock in the morning with you. But yes, thanks for your time. And it's been amazing to hear, the kind of the overall story. But yeah, you were in London this year, weren't you? The Water
Yeah,
Rats.
in January, yeah.
And
the whole of January.
and was it a nice vibe?
Oh, fantastic. Loved every minute of it. Yeah.
Excellent. Well, look, thank you for your time, and have a great day. And I'll go to bed.
Yes. Send my best to your listeners.
I will. Okay, take care. I'll say goodbye.
Thank you, David.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye. And that, dear listener, is the end of the interview, as you could gather. A massive thank you to Zaine Griff for giving me the time for that, his time. This has been the C86 show, David Eastaugh. If you want to contact me, you can on any of the social media platform sites. Just do C86 show. And all these interviews have been archived on Spotify, iTunes, Podbean. True. Have a great week. Stay safe.